Okay, so I'm going to start keeping mind of the time. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Kim. I'm the Executive Director for the Bolsa Chica Land Trust. And tonight we are having a virtual town hall, and I am so pleased that we have Melissa Borde, who is our reserve manager with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, who is going to talk to us about all things Bolsa Chica. So I appreciate everybody here this evening. And when you registered, you were asked if you had any questions. We received 18 questions. So after Melissa's presentation, we're going to try to get through as many of those as possible. If we have any time left over and there are any additional questions, we'll open up the microphones and take them then. If not, you are always welcome to email me at kim@bclandtrust.org with any questions that you have regarding the reserve, the Bolsa Chica Land Trust, and any of the work that we're doing out there. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Melissa. And thank you again so very much for joining us, everyone.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Kim, so much for the introduction and having me here with the Bolsa Chica Land Trust and all you amazing people that are taking time out of your busy lives to learn about Bolsa Chica. I am going to try to start sharing my slides and then I'll introduce myself. We did practice this, so let's make sure I get it right. Uh, Give me just one second. Okay. And I think we got it. Aaron or Kim, give me a thumbs up, verbal thumbs up if you got it. No notes, right? Okay, fantastic.
You got it.
Okay, well, awesome. Thank you all for being here today. Again, my name is Melissa Borde. I'm the reserve manager at Bolsa Chica Ecological Reserve. I work for California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I get the lucky opportunity to be here and manage this incredible place. It's interesting. I was putting together this slideshow, and the very last slide that I did today, I got actually a little emotional because sometimes, we work so hard and we move so fast, we forget to really reflect on, you know, my position specifically. I was reflecting on how important it is, and then what an honor it is to have people like you that are interested in learning about Bolsa Chica. So I hope tonight is fun. I'm going to cover a lot of information. I hope that you can stay with me to the end. Really, Bolsa Chica is very complex, and so I'm only going to cover about 50% of what we really do. If I were, to cover everything, it would probably be about a 3-hour presentation. So I'm going to do a lot of brief introductions and information. If you guys have further questions, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to Kim, and she can definitely connect me with you. And I do want to thank the Land Trust for having me here this evening. And again, thank you to all of you for being here. Just a quick update. I don't have a slide on this, but a lot of people wonder, well, what does CDFW do at Bolsa Chica? Hopefully this presentation will kind of make that clear. But one of the biggest things that we do here is we manage the reserve, and that is anything from access, working with nonprofit groups, to trail management, sign management, overseeing all the research, all the biological monitoring, and the list goes on and on. And there's only 2 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff. We have an additional part-time staff that works with plover. So there's a lot of work to be done. We could not do it without the nonprofit groups, which are so critical to our functioning. Okay, let's hope this. All right, so quick agenda review. I'm going to briefly cover the history, and I really want to highlight this. If you get time after today and you want to learn more about the history, that could be a 3-hour presentation in itself, and I really don't feel that I'm going to do the justice that it deserves because the history is fascinating. It's hundreds of years old. And then really saving the Bolsa Chica, that is a whole nother presentation in itself. So again, I'm going to briefly cover that. But I just want to encourage you guys to get out there, and there's different websites. You can go to the nonprofit groups, you can go to the land trust, you can go onto YouTube. There's great documentaries that tell you all about the history, biological monitoring, the research, current and future projects, the Reserve Watch Program, and our law enforcement division updates, and then of course our partnerships here at Bolsa Chica. And then at the very end, like Kim said, we will open it up for Q&A. All right, so really the brief history here at Bolsa Chica, I'm part of the lands program, but really we are here to, actually, sorry, I'm going to actually skip over that. I'll come back to that in a second. So this is one of my favorite slides. In fact, I keep meaning to blow this up and put it on my wall behind me. This is what Bolsa Chica used to look like. This was the natural Bolsa Chica in the 1800s. And it's really this natural, beautiful estuary with these different islands. And it was really altered over 120 years ago, which again, I'm going to briefly cover. So I've got this timeline. It's a lot of words, but what I'd like to do is just really highlight on those bold points. So obviously you have indigenous people who lived at Bolsa Chica and depended on it for their survival. 1899, you had the Bolsa Chica Gun Club. Really, that was had one of the biggest impacts because when the gun club was formed, they created duck hunting ponds and they really cut off the coastal access to that estuary. So that estuary that you saw on that first slide was completely lost. And then we go all the way to the 20s. You have all the oil drilling, which we know if you've been in Huntington your whole life, that was significant. And then World War II, we have some remnants of that. We have gun turrets or bunkers that exist here at Bolsa Chica. And then in the 60s and 70s, Bolsa Chica, one of the last biggest remaining spaces, urban developers thought, oh boy, this is a great place to develop. So began planning of trying to plan a marina and 5,000 homes. So Bolsa Chica, one of the goals was for these urban development pressures was to basically create that marina and those homes. So I'm going to jump. Now remember, I'm paraphrasing 100 years here. In the 1990s, the conservation movement gained momentum. This is tons of environmental groups, scientists, local residents that rally to protect Bolsa Chica. So I thank all of them, and some of them are on this call tonight. And every time I see them, I'm so excited to see them because really it wouldn't be here today if they didn't fight to save Bolsa Chica. So, and then we're going to jump to 1997, the long-awaited goal of preserving the Bolsa Chica. It was acquired, saved, again, paraphrasing, and now began the start of a $147 million project planning, permitting, and implementation. In 2000, the Bolsa Chica Land Trust won a major settlement to protect the lower bench of the Bolsa Chica Mesa. In 2004 and all the way to 2006 was the beginning of the $147 million restoration project. Really incredible. A good YouTube video to watch is Saving the Bolsa Chica Wetlands by Amigos de Bolsa Chica. And then again on the Bolsa Chica Land Trust page, they have a really, really good timeline. And then today it is a protected ecological reserve. So majority of the property, the Lowlands Restoration Project, which I will describe in just a moment, is owned by State Lands Commission. CDFW owns the upland area, but CDFW manages the entire property. So really a great opportunity to be here. So the Lowlands Restoration Project, again, this could be a whole presentation in itself, so I'm going to briefly cover this. But that project, hopefully, Kim, can you give me a thumbs up? Can you guys see my white pointer? Great. So this is just an aerial footage. This was all oil fields. So part of that restoration was to create this 400-acre full tidal basin and to create this space for halibut, so California halibut, diverse marine and estuary community invertebrates and fish, and enhanced habitat for California least terns, the light-footed clapperel, and the Belding savanna sparrow. So part of that project was reopening this coastal inlet, creating this 400-acre full tidal basin, and then also nest sites, which I'll cover in just a moment. But this is the largest coastal restoration project in Southern California history. Again, $147 million project, and the largest estuary from Monterey to Tijuana Slough at over 1,400 acres in size. So again, restoration. So look at this tidal inlet. You know, it looks pretty small in that last image. So it's reopening that tidal inlet, recreating that estuary. And then here is a boundary of kind of to give you an idea of what the ecological reserve boundary. So the Lowlands Restoration Project is in this area down here, hence the lowlands. And the uplands, where CDFW owns, is this big area up here, which I will talk about in a second. The nest sites that were created, which will actually be in the next couple slides. Actually, let's go back. So we opened that ocean inlet. We've now created this basin, but this basin needs to be protected because if you're going to have halibut, what's that going to attract? Lots of fishermen. So we had to designate these areas as marine protected areas. They're state marine conservation areas. And what that simply means is you cannot take from that basin without a permit and access. And so I won't go too deep into that, but a lot of protections that protect all the species that depend on this ecosystem for their survival. Over 70 species of fish have been documented in the basin. Garibaldi are new. We discovered them 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and the species list just continues to change year by year. So part of that restoration, in addition to the basin, was creating nest sites. Nest site 1, nest site 2, and nest site 3, which are critical turn sites, and plovers too. And we have our turn islands there. I'd like to note 2000, I mentioned the Bolsa Chica Land Trust saves the mesa, the lower bench, the Warner Pond, and acres of wetlands. Really, this is an incredible story, you guys. This was supposed to be developed, condos, homes, and they worked really hard and were able to save it. Just like the lowlands, which again, I'm not really doing a lot of justice in that story. So I really encourage you to watch that YouTube video that I suggested. So the Land Trust has been vital in protecting a lot of the open space here at Bolsa, including the upland, which we currently have an MOU that we manage this area with them. So we're really incredible and thankful for their efforts. They've continued to bring thousands of school kids here every year, which I love, so important. And they work with many different groups, including us, State Lands Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and also NOAA. So why is Bolsa Chica important? I think, I've kind of highlighted some of that, but I really want to focus on 97% of our wetlands have been lost. So this is a critical space. It's a critical stopover along the Pacific Flyway. Over 1,000 species have been documented here. It's critical fish and marine nurseries. And we have green sea turtles, which are also threatened and endangered. We have the 2 marine protected areas and over 23 special status species. That just means that they're threatened or endangered and that they're vulnerable at loss. So we really, really focus on those species. And of course, education opportunities, hiking, enhancing community stewardship and well-being. And then of course, research and projects. So one of my favorite photos I ever took in my 5 years here is this one on the bottom left. This is great egrets, snowy egrets, white pelicans. We had a white-faced ibis, American brown pelican. It was a feeding frenzy and really opened my eyes, so much biodiversity, so many species existing in one space. White pelicans are increasing here, which could indicate, loss of freshwater habitat. So Bolsa Chica and our brackish water, they seem to depend on that system for feeding, foraging, which is incredible. Of course, the beautiful gopher snake and the green sea turtle and the cute little California leastern hatchling. I wanted to add in here thanking the Bolsa Chica Land Trust staff for helping us update our species list, discovering new species and managing so much. This has been really important for future. Bolsa Chica is governed by a steering committee. So it's not just Melissa calling the shots here. No way, I need help. So you've got the Army Corps, State Lands Commission, CDFW, NOAA, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We meet quarterly, we discuss big projects, we approve big funding, we work with the nonprofit groups and secure funding. The EPA was originally part of the steering committee. They are no longer a part of, but they were originally part of that committee when the Bolsa Chica was saved and restored. Of course, 3 nonprofit groups. We have the Land Trust, Conservancy, and the Amigos de Bolsa Chica. They are critical, cannot emphasize it enough, to our operations, preservation, restoration, funding. The list goes on and on. So thank you to all of you that participate in everything you do, from tours to restoration. Additional group is Sea and Sage. They provide public tours. They help fund programs. So we're really incredibly thankful for all of these groups. So biological monitoring, this is the fun part of my job when I'm not doing administrative stuff. Really important. We need to monitor so we know, what are we succeeding in? What are we failing in? How can we be better? How can we enhance a habitat? So the Ecological Reserve is maintained for the purpose of developing statewide programs for protection of rare, threatened, and endangered native plants, wildlife, and aquatic organisms, and specialized terrestrial and aquatic habitat types. So lots of really great things happening here with our monitoring. I personally really like birds. Birds are a powerful indicator of our planet's health. Ospreys, great indicator of our marine ecosystem. So ospreys declined in the 60s due to DDT. Basically, their population along our Orange County coast was wiped out. Are recovering. We have two healthy nesting pairs, one on our property, one adjacent, and their numbers are continuing to increase. So we do ban them. Let me go back to that last slide. Dr. Pete Bloom, we coordinate banding with him, one of the best and most knowledgeable raptor biologists that I've worked with. But this year we do band our ospreys every year. So we have X1, X2, X3. X3 is the cell tower chick. Why does this matter? This is important because we need to know distribution, lifespan. We had a osprey observed in Baja last year, so we know they're migrating, and that same bird was seen back at Bolsa Chica that next spring. So we know that they're fledging, they're surviving. Fun, cute little story. I'm going to kind of sum this up, but that bottom right picture of the fire truck, we really wanted to band that osprey on that cell tower, and so we worked with Pete Bloom. I coordinated the efforts. The firemen love their osprey at Fire Station 7 at Warner and PCH, and they are constantly bombarding my phone with updates, which I appreciate. Well, we went to go ban the chick and realized our lift was not going to reach the chick. So the captain said, hold tight, 10 minutes, and he arrived with this giant fire truck. So this is a really cool collaborative effort. We are able to go up, get the chicken ban. And again, it's really important for conservation for this species. So really exciting. Make sure you report your banded birds to USGS, or you can even report it to us and we can report it for you. Of course, many of you know the bald eagle. This is exciting. Our only really consistent wintering bald eagle here at Bolsa Chica and Huntington, the city of Huntington Beach, that bounces all around. I love this image. This was taken right outside my office window. If you know, my office is in the backside of the wetlands in a hidden little location, and it was a really cool opportunity to photograph her sharing her meal with a turkey vulture. Now, this is also something really fun. Now, she is at her 6th year. Her head's white. She's not banded, so how would you know that it's the same bald eagle? If you look at her right eye, her pupil is not perfectly round. She either had trauma to her eye or it was a genetic defect. I ran this through a couple vets just to confirm. But if you look at her left eye in this picture, it's perfectly round pupil. So again, her right eye has this defect. It's really not perfect. So if you have a scope, you have binos, take a picture, it's her. We're really excited. She should be finding a mate soon to start breeding. Of course, Belding Savannah Sparrow, this is a endangered species that is endemic to our coastal wetlands. Endemic's a really important word. It means they depend on specific habitat types. So Bolsa Chica's last survey was 358 territories for the Belding Savannah Sparrow, so critical, breeding grounds for Beldings. But we're looking to expand the monitoring. We don't have the capacity, so we're hoping to work with other groups to expand the monitoring here at Bolsa Chica. This is a cool conservation story. I'm going to brief through this pretty quick. So 12 captive hatched light-footed ridgeway rails were bred at the San Diego Zoo and the Living Coast Discovery Center in San Diego. And those, with coordination with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and CDFW, they were released at 3 locations: Upper Newport Back Bay, Bolsa Chica, and Huntington Beach Wetlands. So this group, this was the group that we collaborated with this year to release 4. You can see the band numbers. I don't expect you to take pictures or remember that, but just know if you do see a ridgeway rail with a band, please report it. I've had some great photographers that I really depend on for that information, and they've been so important to helping us monitor this bird. The best part of this story, guys, and one of the coolest things in my 5 years at Bolsa Chica, one of the females that we released 4 here last year, same scenario, just last year, 2024, we released 4 females, and one of them hatched 7 eggs this year at 1 year old. So 1 year old, she hatched 7 eggs here at Bolsa Chica. So pretty excited about that. Lam Sung's a photographer that gives me a lot of information, really appreciate it. And then, of course, Mike Thomas provides a lot of photos as well. So I'm thankful for them sharing their photos. We spend a lot of time managing, monitoring California least terns and the western snowy plover. I'm going to brief this pretty quick because I have quite a few slides on this. We put a lot of time and energy into managing these species. So Western snowy plovers are federally protected. This year we had 110 nests with 59 fledglings. That means birds that fledge the site. In 2024, we had a record year, 140 nests and 169 fledge, both record for the Western snowy plover. Shows the importance of Bolsa for the plovers. The California least-tern everywhere along our coast is continuing to struggle. They are federally endangered and state listed endangered. Our total nests this year were 106 with 0 fledglings. Very tough year, and it was all because of predators. So we had mammals and corvids that really are responsible for predating these birds. And a lot of time and energy goes into monitoring these predators and helping better understand how we can manage them. 2024, we had 104 nests and 45 fledge. So every year goes up and down. Just a quick review. This is our recovery goals for the snowy plover for our region. So we must have 500 breeding adult pairs maintained for 10 years. That's a long time. One fledge for one male for 5 years before delisting, and then of course restoration and education. So that is for the specific to the Western snowy plover. This is just a quick graph. Look on the left, BCER at the bottom, the 140. That just goes to show that Bolsa Chica is significant habitat for plovers. So we've got all of the sites: Huntington State Beach, Bolsa Chica, San Onofre, Saltworks, Tijuana Slough. Again, Bolsa Chica has one of the highest numbers. Sorry, there's a plane flying over my office. I hope that is not too loud. And here is a fun little video of this bird just hatched, a Western snowy plover. Sorry, not the best videographer. I'm a biologist. I love sharing that one. Let's see if I can figure out how to go to the next slide. There we go. I want to thank Peter and Ross. We have the most extensive plover monitoring program in the entire West Coast. They are here 7 days a week. They know every brood. They know every nest. They are working on modifying our mini enclosures, which we place over the eggs. It gives the eggs a chance to hatch. The adults can come and go, no problem. And if we don't use these Emmys, we typically lose our nest within 12 hours to corvids or terrestrial mammals. So really important. They're modifying these to try to prevent avian predators from perching. So quick review, recovery objectives for the California least-tern. So 1,200 or more breeding pairs across 20 secure coastal areas. There's not a lot of coastal areas, so it's a really tight recovery objectives. And of course, 1 or more fledge per pair for 3-year mean. Of course, habitat restoration, conservation, those are all really important things that we do as site managers to ensure that we can succeed and contribute to the recovery objectives. I wanted to share chick efficiency. So we work so hard with the nonprofits. We make these sites beautiful. We attract the birds. It's suitable habitat. The birds nest. That's great, right? We have the eggs. But what we really need to do is protect those eggs, get those chicks to hatch and fledge. That is where we are succeeding. So this is a new measure, a metric that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is encouraging us to use. And so 2024, our chick efficiency, which is your fledglings divided by hatchlings or vice versa. So we had 55% chick efficiency in 2024. We had 51% in 2023 and 30% in 2022. So it increased over time, but then this year we had 0. So it is constantly up and down with the California least-tern, which I'll show you a graph here in a moment. This is a California least-tern that just hatched out of an egg. Pretty darn cute. I got to do it one more time because it's so short. Coolest part of my job? Wish I could do that all day long. Okay, so this really demonstrates California least-terns, which is actually a 5% decline overall for the population. And the reason is they're ground nesting birds. There's not a lot of habitat and there's conflict with predators and even dogs. And I could go on forever about that. But what you'll see here is I started in 2020. We lost our federal funding, and then I was able to secure federal funding these next 4 years. and the Land Trust helped fund predator control and observations and monitoring. And then this year we lost everything, all our federal funding. So we had a really difficult time managing and monitoring. We did implement a volunteer program. We're going to improve that because I don't think things are going to change soon. So we have to be innovative and creative of how we do this. How do we understand predators? So that is something we're working really hard on doing here at Bolsa Chica. This is great. So 3 years ago, Brian Daniels, most amazing birder, so much knowledge, really is helping us survey our restricted area. The restricted area is not accessible to the public, but we need to be collecting data so we understand the distribution, the species that are nesting. It will help contribute to future management and understanding for future planning. On the left is a redhead. That's a California species of concern. They are nesting here at Bolsa Chica. The last record was 1998, so that's pretty exciting. And it's in a little area that we don't really cover too much because we just don't have time. We're a very, very small team. On the right, we have lots of migratory birds that come through in winter. So all that data that he's contributing and reporting to CDFW and to eBird is helping us understand the importance of the restricted area for migratory and nesting birds. So we want to thank him for all his efforts. So again, part of our monitoring efforts. Many know green sea turtles. We work with NOAA to understand distribution. So I think I'm on the right slide here. You see all these little dots. Those are all the turtle observations in 2023 that NOAA shared with me inside our bay. This is a radio telemetry on this turtle to show where, it's traveling from the Seal Beach National Wildlife Refuge through the harbor into the bay. The good news is now we had 5 green sea turtles inside our full tidal basin. That is new within the last 6 to 7 years. And that number, I even had a little juvenile that was unsure of me and didn't know why I was there. But that's a great indicator of our eelgrass, which I will talk about in a second. So, and the Bolsa Chica Conservancy has started monitoring. We're looking to expand monitoring in our full tidal basin. Really important because we want to know Bolsa Chica we know is important for their survival. Maybe one day breeding, who knows, maybe, and then we can also get future funding to help restore and enhance their habitat. Eelgrass. Eelgrass is critical. It's really one of the most important components of the ecosystem. So during the restoration, there was a 1/4 acre restoration. It is now 170 acres in size, one of the best success stories of the entire project. Why is that important? Eelgrass is critical for fish nurseries, foraging for least terns that are eating those fish, for the green sea turtle, for the brant, which I'll show in just a second. And it's really just so important. It's important that we continue to monitor it. So again, a very successful story here at Bolsa. The brant observation. So these birds migrate thousands of miles to come to Bolsa Chica. And you can see on the upper right, 2010, we had 0, 5, 10. And over time, our record now is 537 brant here that spend the entire winter here in our full tidal basin. So sorry about the bird chirping. That's my birdie clock. So you can see that upward trend. I mean, it's pretty significant. So we actually were talking about it today as a team. These birds come in, many of them come not many, a few will be banded, and we can learn where they fledged from. So we had a couple from the north slope of Alaska, which is really great to know and understand. I've had the question presented to me, are you concerned about the brant affecting your eelgrass? So far, there's no evidence of that. We do monitor the eelgrass every year, and it's continuing to thrive. So we are not concerned about that. I love this picture of the brant over the full tidal with the snow-capped mountains. Pacific Air Show. So this was one of the questions in the public comments. I could do a whole presentation on this. So I'm going to do one slide. I'm going to paraphrase. If you have questions, please feel free to ask. This took 5 years of groups coming together, agencies, nonprofits, volunteers, to try to work with the Pacific Air Show Code 4 in the city to avoid or reduce impacts at Bolsa Chica. It is significant. I've been here 5 years, and when I first started, my first year at the air show, I said, how is this allowed? So we worked really hard to educate the pilots, educate the city. Why do we need to avoid low flyovers or any flyovers at Bolsa Chica? We support the air show. We don't want the air show to close. We know it's important for the economy. But what we want is we are hoping them to avoid the reserve or fly at higher altitudes. That has taken 5 years efforts, and we're happy to say through a lot of pressure, they were um, they were forced to get a CDP, and because of the lack um, of getting the permits and Coastal Act, they were fined $275,000 in violation. That is all going back to Bolsa Chica. So we are going to use that to enhance habitat and help with trail management. So this year was great. We had 95% reduction in impacts. That is awesome. I'm very, 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 very proud of that. But the federal planes weren't flying, so we'll see next year. They are actually the most problematic planes for the entire air show. So really hopeful that, what we've done and the hard work we've all put in, that it will be better. What you see on the screen are the stars. We had awesome, amazing volunteers from every group come in and help us monitor the impacts. This year was really boring for them because there wasn't a lot of planes, but I told them that is good news. That's what we want. We don't want lots of reports from you. Okay, research at BCR. I'm going to go over this pretty brief. I asked the researchers to provide these slides, and they're biologists and scientists, so there's a lot of information on them, which is great. So I love working with Dr. Christine Whitcraft. She is wonderful. This is her group. They are part of this estuarine marine protected areas monitoring group. And really, to paraphrase what they're doing is this group is coming in and monitoring with OPC, Ocean Protection Council, marine protected areas and estuaries, understanding how can we build framework to monitor all marine protected areas so we can develop framework and better understand how to manage our marine protected areas. So we work closely with her and her amazing students here at Bolsa Chica. We don't need to go over all this, but what I want you to know is when we receive research proposals, there's a lot of things we need to consider. Is it going to benefit science? Will it benefit the species? Will it benefit Bolsa Chica? What are the impacts of that research? These are all important things that we need to know to manage Bolsa Chica for future restoration of Bolsa Chica. And we really need to be aware of how the system's evolving. We are so busy that we really can't do that. So we collaborate with these research teams to monitor and manage these areas. And if you guys want me to go over that slide later, I can definitely do that. Um, so analysis of environmental factors affecting success of Pacific cordgrass. Cordgrass is important, right? That's a critical plant for rails. So we want to know that. I don't have the capacity to go out and do that. So we collaborate with these groups. The Land Trust has an amazing research page with topics. So if you guys know of anyone really wanting to do research, point them that direction. And then Erin works with them to basically, will reach out to me. We develop a proposal with them, and then we collaborate with them. So thank you guys for your support on that. This is a great group, Southern California Coastal Water Research Project. It's a mouthful. Basically, what this is some of the coolest biologists. I want to be them when I grow up, coming from all over Southern California to monitor eelgrass at Bolsa Chica. But what they're actually doing is they're learning the best methods to monitor the eelgrass. So they're using Bolsa Chica, but we're also getting that information. And it's really important that we're able to do that. So great group of people to work with. We have a mesocarnivore study. So the Mammal Lab from Long Beach State. This is a great study, understanding distribution through the wetlands in an urban environment. So skunks, coyotes, raccoons, all the mesocarnivores that you can think about. And one of the things we do here is what is the method? So they have cameras that are capturing images. Doesn't have an impact, right? So we utilize that information to help us understand distribution and maybe impacts on other species. I won't go over this too much, but they are still working on compiling all the results. This is going to be important for us for future. So we do work with them regularly to collect this data and analyze this data. This was all the bottom right were images taken here specifically at Bolsa Chica. So if you're out on the trails and you do see cameras, that is most likely what you're seeing is the mammal camera. We don't have, I shouldn't say that we don't have, when we do have poaching or we have illegal activity, we definitely will install cameras, but typically that you would know that if that was happening, or maybe you wouldn't. Current and future projects. So I'm actually moving pretty quick on this. So dredging. I've received a lot of calls in the last year. When is dredging going to begin? So, a lot of people who've lived here a lot longer than I have are saying, this is the most sand shoaling I've ever seen. So, I started monitoring it closely with the help of Merkel and Associates and State Lands Commission. And you can see the image on the left. I just took this image not that long ago, about a month ago. That is a lot of sand buildup at our tidal inlet. And this image was taken actually over a year ago, but you can see the sandbars that form. This whole area now is full of sand. Why does that matter? Well, if you don't have a full tidal prism, the water is able to move with the tides fully. It can impact habitat, it can impact fisheries, eelgrass, etc. So the goal of the dredging is to maintain full tidal range to protect the eelgrass habitat from declines, which would be catastrophic if we lost our eelgrass beds, and then eliminate erosion to downcast beaches. So we actually have to replenish the beaches. A lot of that sand comes into our inlet, into our system. That sand we pump right back out to the beach to replenish. It's expensive. So typically $1 to $2 million. It's now up to $3.4 million this year, and that cost is expected to rise. So that brings me to the next most really a very important study that the Land Trust helps support and make happen with the steering committee and the State Lands Commission. We did a sustainable alternative study. So what we learned is after the restoration in 2006, when that ocean inlet was open, there were lots of challenges. One of those being sediment buildup at that ocean inlet. And so it affected the water levels and the tidal prism. So that tidal prism is changing. You could have negative impacts on the vegetation, like I mentioned. So it requires the inlet requires annual dredging. So the purpose of this study was to really evaluate the design flaws, how we can be better, and how we can find solutions in the future. We have to do that. We can't spend $4 or $5 million every year, and we want to be able to have a less impact on the environment, because there is a lot of species that use that as a transitioning, right? We have sea turtles coming in there. We have sharks transitioning. The halibut are going out to the ocean. So it's really important that we reduce those impacts and the costs associated with dredging. So this study was really important, and it's something we're going to use for the future to really evaluate what we can do to alter that system. I'm just briefly covering that, and then Kim, at the end, if you want me to add anything to that, we definitely can. So we are now in the lowlands area. This image with the water was taken in 2023 when we had those gigantic rains. I didn't sleep a lot. I don't think Vincent did either. I think Vincent's on this call, right, Vincent? But what happened here was we have rainwater, but we also have water from the neighborhoods that is pumped into Bolsa Chica, into our Freeman Creek, which was once a natural creek. And then we are responsible for getting that water out. Because pumps and gates and infrastructure are susceptible to failure from salt air and wear and tear, it requires a constant upkeep of funding and maintenance and repairs. And so this year we just got so much rain. We were at full capacity. Fortunately, there was no catastrophic flooding, no infrastructure damage. But what we really learned is the capacity of Bolsa Chica during a rainstorm. But also, when the power went out, our pumps can't run. If our pumps can't run, we can't get water out of this area. So our team spends a lot of time in the rainy season and the winter managing this type of infrastructure. I want to highlight that a lot of these pumps were designed and built part of the original restoration for us to be able to move water to create habitat for migratory birds and wintering birds. By far, my most favorite part of the job. It's pretty spectacular when you're coming off the nesting season and you're entering fall or late summer, and you can move water to create habitat. Right now, outside my office, we had so much rain the last few weeks. I guess that might have been 3 weeks ago. I have species in front of my office that I have never had in my 5 years. They're here at Bolsa Chica, but not near my office. I had 24 long-billed curlews, whimbrels, and then thousands of little peeps right here. And that was a cell that I hadn't really seen inundated. So all of that is really important. The Bolsa Chica Land Trust, thank you to all of you that contributed, help us raise money to be able to repair some infrastructure and an actuator so we could actually move gates and create habitat. So thank you for your support on that. So really what I'm saying here, actually, I didn't realize Vincent's in this picture. Hope Vincent was, at least we just have your back here, Vincent. But a lot of work and time goes into managing these areas. Now, as you can see, our culverts, which is how we move the water from cell to cell, are seriously compromised. And so part of the future of Bolsa Chica, well, do we need these culverts? How can we utilize or install new culverts? There's a lot to think about for improving how we move water. So lots of degraded, those wheels where we turn and open are really rusty. I hope I'm keeping everyone engaged and I'm not losing anyone. Okay, good. The right side, the erosion. This is Rabbit Island. This is a natural elevation and wear and tear from just runoff. And so part of the funding from the violations of the air show is actually going to go to funding this project, just a small chunk of it, to enhance these trails and get them back to what they should be. This is obviously a safety concern. Our new bench project, this is pretty exciting. So if you're interested in sponsoring a bench, I'm sure they're going to go like that. Our team has put together a GIS map. We are basically removing all old benches that pose a safety risk, but we want to install new benches. And those benches will have sponsorships. We are going to work with the nonprofit groups to manage those. And then our team will actually install and maintain those benches. So you can reach out to the Land Trust if that's something that you're interested in doing. We hope to have that project done like ASAP, quickly. Turn Island restoration. So BCLT has been critical in this project. I love this image. This is a California lease tern with her chicks under her wings. Pretty spectacular. That always captivates everyone. I want to touch base because I'm doing good on time. This bottom right photo are elegant terns, one of my favorite species, but they are doing pretty good, but they are considered vulnerable. And so the elegant terns, generally speaking, are shifting north. And when I say north, since 1997, our population has increased here at Bolsa Chica. They have not nested here in the last few years. That's pretty typical. They bounce all around. But populations are increasing, they're shifting north. That puts more pressure on the California lease tern for habitat. When there's not a lot of habitat available, they are now competing for habitat. So something I think, I was out at Pier 400 today with state parks, all these managers, and we're collaborating together. We really need to start thinking about expanding nesting sites for terns. The Tern Island is a perfect example. So these islands are significantly degraded. These are two islands here in our bay, inner bay. And so the idea is to increase that surface space so we can create more habitat for the terns to successfully nest. We also want to create habitat somewhere else too, so the elegant terns don't hover and hog the whole thing. Now, again, I love elegant terns. Actually, a big part of my master's project was finding alternative solutions for this conflict, if you want to call it that. So I love this photo. I probably wasn't even born on the one on the left. No, I was born. I just wasn't at Bolsa Chica yet. That's a lot of birds on nest site 1. So nesting area, you've got elegant terns. You probably have Caspian terns, least terns. The one on the right is actually North Tern Island, taken many years ago by Kelly O'Reilly. And so again, we are working with the Land Trust. The permitting has been really fun. I'm learning. And we are going to eventually get funding to restore these islands. So really important project. The Rose Foundation grant secured by the Amigos de Bolsa Chica. This is one I'm also very proud of. When I took the job, out of sight, out of mind. We have a 3/4 mile stretch in our basin the public does not see. It is riprap. It is dangerous. We cannot have volunteers in there. How does Melissa go out and clean up this? This is millions and millions and millions of microplastics. Unacceptable. This system should not be exposed to this. So the Amigos kindly offered to apply for a grant through the Rose Foundation. It's a watershed grant, fits perfect. And we were able to secure the funding to remove a 3/4 mile stretch of debris in our full tidal basin. The next step was to secure more funding for cameras, which we have installed. The Amigos are leading that effort to understand how the trash moves in the system. And eventually we'll work with the nonprofit groups to purchase interception devices to prevent it from going all throughout the system and impacting the wildlife. I had to add this picture. I know it's really sad, but wildlife comes to places where they feel safe when they die, if they're dying. We get a lot of birds here with lures attached to them. I was just out in the field last week with the marine safety captain with a fire, a white pelican completely tangled in fishing line. Fortunately, I had surgery and it's going to survive, and we are going to do a documentary with the Wetlands and Wildlife Care Center on that. But this is something we have to continue to educate. Like, this bird was hungry, it saw a shiny fish, of course it's going to dive for it. So education is really, really important. This is after the cleanup, so pretty big difference from that to this. So again, thank you to all those that participated. Fire resiliency project. So really important. 2019, Bolsa Chica had a 62-acre fire on the lower bench mesa. And so recently we got funding. I had a staff out of San Diego named Lowry that was helping the land trust lead project. So they're restoring this 20-acre area, which I can't wait to get out. I need to get out there with Beverly soon and learn more about their progress. But this system is always changing. And after the fire, I know they had different plants popping up, lupin and poppies and things that hadn't really existed in that space. It was a chunk of non-native. And so in addition to the restoration they've already done down by the trails, this is an area that will be important for future. So we're really thankful for their collaboration on that. This was one that State Lands wanted me to share. Of course, sea level rise resiliency. So we are seeing major inundations like we haven't seen before. As I mentioned, the Turn Islands, I know the north parking lot was completely inundated with water recently. So we need to adapt the system for feasibility for future. So we're doing a feasibility study to understand, what is that? Who does that include? How do we adapt the system to, maximize in biodiversity, but also consider sea level rise? Considering also we have homes behind us. Very important. Collaboration. This is something I'm really proud of. And this is, I think, almost the last section of my PowerPoint. So hang in there, guys. Collaboration is so important at Bolsa Chica. I can't emphasize that enough. And that's something I'm very passionate about. We can't do this alone without the groups. So all of the groups that you see at the bottom, those logos for each nonprofit group in the state, came together, worked together to develop the Bolsa Chica Reserve Watch program. When I took this job, I was completely overwhelmed by the amount of violations and disrespect for the reserve. And so I knew I couldn't do it on my own. My full-time staff can't be out chasing dog walkers, even though people expect us to do that. We have a 1,400 acre reserve to manage. And so how do you solve that? So we developed this Reserve Watch program. Basically 6 months, these groups came together. They developed framework. They fund the whole program. And they hired Annie Daw, who does an amazing job managing this program. It started in 2022. It has been successful. We've got positive feedback from the public, which is really important. And really, the program was designed to educate the community why the rules exist, but also collect data. So our LED, our law enforcement division, understands pattern and use, and they can come on site and do details. If we have a problematic visitor that is not complying, we will absolutely find that individual and cite them. So really important, their interface in helping us track all the use and violations, but also that positive interaction with the public. She added 9 volunteers this year, so that's very exciting. There are now 38 active volunteers present for the program. So again, if you see someone in this vest, please thank them for their service and being here. This is a great group of volunteers. Quick review of the data, like 2025, 22,000 visitor interactions, 613 violations documented. This one always blows people's mind. People always think it's dogs. It's actually off trail is our highest violation. And I love photography. I'm a photographer, kind of. It's actually one of our biggest violations here. So if you are a photographer, we please ask for your respect. Stay on the trail. That's why the trails are there. If you go off the trail and you disrupt that wildlife, that is a violation. And you are disrespecting wildlife. So something I'm super passionate about. I hope to get the word out more. And then Total 3 years is 61,000 interactions, 1856 violations, and again, off trail is the highest violation. In the past 16-month Orange County Law Enforcement Division, we have four. There are only really three field officers for all of Orange County. Have written 171 citations here at Bolsa Chica alone. There's definitely more than 300 in the last 16 months. State parks, I know one officer wrote 50 citations since May. We have other wardens that are coming from all over Southern California that are citing here. So I'm guessing that number is probably actually closer to 400. That's taken a lot of work from our team, educating the wardens, sharing this reserve watch data, super important. As you can see this image with people off trail here, this is 100% unacceptable. This is the edge of the water where birds forage. So please don't ever go off trail. Really important. Trend and violation. So Annie did a really good job putting this slide together for you. I hope that I can do a good job interpreting it for you. So the violations are represented as percents of the reported interactions. So this is because the number of visitors is not consistent throughout the year. So the green bar represents the cumulative data, including all data before the stated month. And then the blue bars represent data from that individual month. So what you can see here is there is a downward trend in that violation ratio. So it's the violations are down 3% as of November. So that's pretty good. So again, she's measuring the number of interactions with the violations. So it's a pretty accurate measurement. It shows that the program is effective, and we are grateful for that. And if you guys are interested in volunteering, you can actually go on the Land Trust website for more information. So thank you, Annie, for all your hard work and everyone that supports that program. Collaborative efforts. We have our Ocean Tidal Inlet. This is not an area that we've done volunteer work days, and to my knowledge, in my time, for sure not in my time, not something my staff can do. So reached out to so many groups, all raised their hands. Yes, let's do it. We knew there were big tides coming. We needed to clean this up. So I love this picture. Sorry about my face, but look at all the groups that came together to make this happen. I'm very, very, very proud of this. I'll let you guys read the logos, but really we were able to significantly impact the system by removing that debris before it enters the basin. Nest Site work days. This is the Land Trust at Nest Site 2. And then, of course, we work with the other nonprofit groups, the Amigos de Bolsa Chica and the Conservancy, to manage the different sites. Again, couldn't do it without them, so thank you. This is one of my favorite ones. So recently, we've been working with a lot of different regions in our HabCon group to bring their staff to Bolsa Chica so they can better understand coastal ecosystems. What are things they need to think about when permitting and considering CEQA and permitting reviews or environmental reviews? So a lot of collaboration in our own division and in our own department, but then also all throughout the state. The one on the right is the pollinator group. So this is people from all around the state that come to Bolsa Chica to learn, how do we monitor pollinators? Why is it important? What are the methods? And so it's really great to be able to collaborate with these guys. Effects of oil on Wildlife Conference. This is a great group of people from all around the world. Basically, we come together and we find, how can we reduce impacts? So if there's an oil spill local, which we know that can happen, it happened in 2021, how do we best manage and prevent impacts? And then if there are impacts, how do they collaborate together to treat, birds, etc. So the one on the ground next to me is Julie. She is one of the managers at International Bird Rescue. And then again, there's just people from all around the country that come to this conference, and it's hosted all around the world, but they came to Bolsa Chica to learn about how we reduce impacts. We do an oil boom deployment every year. This is important, guys, because we need to be able, if there is an oil spill, we need to effectively manage that boom. That is not my job, but it is my job to advise. So this is OSPR with CDFW. We have California Resource Corporation, the oil company that works here on site, and we have Huntington Beach Fire Department, their hazmat team. So we all work together. It's basically a test. They install the boom, the oil company does, and then we grade them on that test. And so we always want them to succeed, right? We want them to succeed. So we always give that feedback to help them improve on their plan and their implementation. Another really important one, the one on the right, Natural Resource Volunteer Program. These are volunteers that volunteer with our wardens. We educated them all about Bolsa Chica. How can they help us support reducing violations? The one on the left is Orange County OC Impacts. It's basically the enforcement division. So you have city, county, state, and federal officers all come together and land managers, and we find better ways to work together to manage enforcement. The cool thing about this meeting, the district attorney office, deputy district attorney, came to this meeting and he basically said, hey, this is what I need from you to be able to prosecute people, which is really important. So, like, I am writing a report on why does trespassing affect birds. He needs to know that. He's not an environmental scientist. So he came and he presented to us, and that's really important collaboration for us to succeed in writing citations, etc. Of course, Audubon California Coastal Leadership Program. I love working with the youth. It is so important. I don't get to do it a ton, but this is two groups and then the LA Youth Bird Group that we tour here at Bolsa Chica. And of course, outreach and education. This is at the middle school and elementary school right behind here. That's my daughter on the right. She sometimes thinks I'm cool, but this day she thought I was really cool. But it's important, right? This is their backyard. We want to engage them, inspire them to learn. How can they protect Bolsa Chica? How can they get involved? So this is something I'm really passionate about. I don't get to do it a ton, but I do try to get out and do it. So again, important. Wow, I got through it. Um, Final thoughts. I just want everyone to take a second and look at this photo. I took this photo 3 years ago, flying over Bolsa Chica, coming home from Thanksgiving from Oregon. I had fallen asleep on the plane. I woke up and I said, oh my gosh, it speaks for itself. It is so incredible that this space exists, that it's protected, and that these plants and wildlife and people can, plants and wildlife depend on it for their survival. One of the things I want to tackle before I die is light pollution. This really points that picture. I mean, look at the light pollution, but it shows how important Bolsa Chica is, where birds, wildlife can actually rest and be, and hopefully undisturbed to the best of their ability, our ability. So I really like ending with this, and I'll always hold this photo with me dear near to my heart till the day I go, because it just really paints the picture of how important it is to protect open spaces. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support. Hopefully I answered a chunk of your questions. I'm here to answer hopefully some more. And that is it. I just thank you guys for your support and collaboration. And thanks to the Land Trust for having me.
Well, Melissa, thank you. Just thank you so very much. I've been with BCLT for over 30 years and worked with many of our reserve managers in that time. And your work and your collaboration with us and with all the other groups is just so outstanding. And, we are just thrilled to be able to partner with CDFW and you in particular and your team to get out there and keep doing all the good work. And as you guys obviously saw, it takes a village. It takes a community, and I'm just so grateful that Melissa and her team are leading the charge on this. I cannot overstate how pleased and proud we are to be able to work with Melissa and her team and all of the groups and people who care about Bolsa Chica. So, thank you all especially for those who come out and volunteer. I hear a number of our board members, a number of our volunteer leaders, our staff, our docents, people who, come out to really assist us, our donors. Thank you so very much, because everything that Melissa said takes money. It really does, and our money comes from all different ways to come in to help Bolsa. It's unfortunately never enough, but we are grateful to our, people who support us financially, who come out to volunteer. Obviously, if you're interested, check out our website, bclandtrust.org. And I think we have a few minutes. So, Melissa, do you want to tackle some of the questions that we received from folks on the call?
Yeah, do you want me to? I have them actually physically right here in front of me.
Yeah.
Or did you have any in the chat, or should we just focus on these ones?
Why don't we just focus on these? 'Cause
Okay, sounds good.
and again, folks, if you have questions that weren't answered, please go ahead, go onto our website. You can always email us, and we are always happy to answer your questions as well.
Well, thank you, Kim. There was actually quite a lot of questions on here, and some of them are questions that are above my pay grade, so I actually can't even attempt to answer them. But if you really want to know the answer, feel free to reach out to me. I will definitely find the answer for you. One of them was, what are you doing with disruptive noise on PCH, speeding motorcycles, cars, etc.? We worked with Christine Whitcraft to measure decibels here at Bolsa Chica, and it's definitely above the desired number for birds to alter. I just use birds as an example. So eventually, yes, that would be one of the 159 things on my list that I would like to tackle in my time here at Bolsa Chica. That's going to take moving a lot of mountains because all of PCH is a cruise spot for Harleys and, cars and things like that. So that will require city, county, state, federal collaboration, and I think it could be done. Hopefully we can definitely get there one day. Someone had asked about working with the nonprofit groups. We're all here for the same reason. It's important we work together, and each group has, specialize in different things. And so my job is to work with each group, collaborate together. I am all about the collaboration. So I think that's an important one. And I think we've done a really good job the last 5 years in my time working together. So thank you guys. Um, the Bolsa Chica future. So really, I kind of highlighted that in some of the slides. We know that we need to restore, we need to really create different methods to managing our inlet. We also need to adapt for sea level rise. And there's a lot of space here that still needs to be restored that is could be valuable habitat. Doesn't have a lot of value at the moment, but it is open space, and that includes part of the future full tidal basin. So there's lots of things that could happen and will happen. We're just in the starting planning phases of many of those um, future planning. Has the Winto Burrowing Owl returned? I never tell that secret. There is a burrowing owl. It's in a restricted area. I will not disclose the location. If that owl returns on the Wintersburg Channel, I'm going to go out and scold him because that creates a lot of work for me because I don't want that little owl to be harmed by dogs. And so I have zero tolerance for harassing the bird. And last year there was a lot of people that just didn't follow rules. So we did post signs, and those signs are to the lands manager discretion. So once I create language on that sign, the wardens will cite according to that. And thankfully, we did post the signs and everyone behaved after that. The wardens were hiding in the bushes up at Brightwater, so they were watching. And thankfully, they didn't have to cite anyone. But that silly little owl, there's all these places it could go in the reserve, and it chose Wintersburg Channel. But if I knew where the owl was, I would, the other owl, the other owl I'm referencing is actually its fourth winter that I know of returning here at Bolsa Chica. Um, we answered about the Pacific Air Show. And then I think there was one on elegant terns. So elegant terns haven't nested here in the last few years. They've been sporadically nesting. Actually, last year we did not account for about 150,000 birds in the entire West Coast. So there's a theory that they may not have bred because of maybe low food availability. We're not sure. So there's a group, really trying to figure that out together. I wish I could determine and dictate if they were going to return, but I can't. It's nature. Nature will do what it wants, but they are shifting north. So it is very likely that they will. So that's a really good question. Um, someone asked about the BMX dirt bike e-bike riders up behind the Brightwater property. That is not our property. That actually belongs to one of the native tribes. And so I'm sure we will collaborate with them in the future to manage that. But that is completely outside of my jurisdiction. But of course, those lines don't matter, right? We all need to work together to manage the areas and protect the areas. So I'm sure that time will come eventually. But again, it is not in the ecological reserve. Kim, is there any other ones on here that you really
Well, I would
you want to tackle, or myself?
Sure. So, a couple of questions regarding funding that comes into the reserve from the Bolsa Chica Land Trust. So, a good portion of our funding comes from folks like you on this call, a lot of our donors, all of our membership is extraordinarily generous, and we are seriously grateful for that. And in addition, we also receive state grants, foundation grants, corporate giving. All of that comes in from a number of different ways. Many of them, the grants and foundation giving, I write the grants for Bolsa Chica Land Trust. So as an example, that sustainability study that Melissa pointed to, that we were able to do at Bolsa Chica because of a $325,000 grant that the Land Trust wrote and was given through the state. So at times, depending on the project, we are always looking for state funding. We do not look to federal funding, especially given the climate, the federal government now. You understand why. It's a massive lift to do a federal grant with a zero, comfort of success. And even then, I work with other land trusts up and down the state who get federal grants who had them all yanked this year. So it's heartbreaking. So if the state is willing to support the work at Bolsa Chica, those are relationships that we've spent decades building, and we are usually very successful in having that money come in. Corporate funding, a lot of times corporations will come and volunteer with us. They will send their corporate employees to do a team building event. We usually have that surrounding our habitat restoration project. So Beverly handles that. And a lot of them are very generous afterwards and will send us some financial support. We also have foundation grants. Again, those are competitive grants that I will write, and that money is typically earmarked for projects. So we have a lot of different ways that money does come in, but we have a lot to spend it on. So between our habitat restoration and making sure that we are fully staffed for that, as well as our education programs, and then all the work that goes on behind the scenes with doing those sustainability projects and the Turn Island projects and things of that sort. Again, it takes a village. So that's in a nutshell, that's where our money comes from. And then we did have some questions regarding the Native American and Indigenous people at Bolsa Chica. I have a 30-year relationship with Anthony Morales. He is our most likely descendant. He is Chief Redblood of the San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians. He is a dear friend, and his tribal council has been involved at Bolsa Chica for the 30 plus years that I've been here. And this is their sacred lands, and he was the person who got all of Bolsa Chica placed on the sacred lands listing for the state of California. And so we are always in touch and talking about ways of ensuring that the Native American and Indigenous people have a voice here at Bolsa Chica, making sure that they always feel welcome. And there are things, hopefully in the near future where you're going to be, seeing them more out at Bolsa and really being more engaged. It's very difficult because many of those folks, their tribal councils, there are two that we work closely with. One is the San Gabriel, the other one is in San Juan Capistrano. And there's a lot that these people are doing. So much of their sacred lands are under threat of development or have been developed upon, just fighting for their rights to their sacred places and their culture. And so at Bolsa Chica, we're fortunate that the majority of it is finally now protected within the ecological reserve boundaries, but that is not the case for them for much of their sacred landscapes. And so, they're few and far between. Their fights are intense, trying to reclaim the respect for their culture. So at Bolsa Chica, it's been a slow process. It's been very painful. But we are obviously, supportive, engaged, and always working to ensure that they have a voice here. So with that, I think we have done it. Now, let's see. Yeah, we are over time. So, folks, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. Please let us know if you've liked this, if you want more. We have, as Melissa said, she just took thumbnails of all the things out here. Bolsa Chica is an extremely complicated place with a very long history. And it's complicated in its, who does what, whose jurisdiction it is, what's going on out there, why is it important? And one of the main things that we receive are just questions, people wondering, well, what's going on? What is this? Why is it this way? And a lot of folks kind of thinking on their own, though, oh, it's, figuring it out. And sometimes you're not right. So we want to make sure that you have the right information. We know it's complicated, but we also know it's beautiful, it's important, and it's something we all love. And so, again, thank you. Thank you, Melissa, so very much for doing this. Happy holidays, everyone. And please, if you have any questions, want to support us, reach out. We can't do this without you. So, with that, thank you. Everyone, have a lovely evening. Happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. Appreciate everyone's support.
Good night.